A warm welcome to all of you to this press conference on the Petersberg Climate Dialogue. We have headphones for everyone for simultaneous translation. So if you don't speak German, Brazilian or English, may please use them. And we have the pleasure to welcome the Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, together with the designated President of the COP30 in Belém, André Corrêa do Lago, and the EU Climate Commissioner, Wopke Hoekstra. And without further ado, I give the floor to the Foreign Minister.
Good morning, and I will speak in German. Yes, for German media, even though we have a lot of international media who I welcome as well. Einen schönen guten Tag, lieber André.
Good morning, dear André, dear Wopke, bem-vindo a Berlin, welcome in Berlin. A warm welcome to Berlin. I'm delighted to welcome you here because the Petersberg Climate Dialogue is taking place this year in extremely challenging time as far as geopolitics and climate action is concerned. We all have to make a full effort to stay on track. That not only holds true for our joint efforts against the climate crisis and also for the rules-based international order. In light of the most recent data of the World Meteorological Organization on the rapid pace of global warmings, it is these figures make it clear that our joint action against the climate crisis is more urgent than ever before, so that we achieve the 1.5-degree goal of Paris. I'm all the more happy that we are here as representatives of the North and South to, if you will, be here in triple climate power, if you will, and to fight for the objectives of the Paris Agreement. Together with delegations from 40 countries, we are showing here at the Petersberg Climate Dialogue the climate crisis can only be tackled together as a global community that comes together and shares responsibility. Only together can we bring global warming back on track to reach the 1.5 degrees of Paris. It's up to all of us sharing and shouldering responsibility together. 1 week ago, we took a historic decision in Germany. Together as democratic parties, we paved the way in the Bundestag for an additional 100 billion euro for climate action. Transitioning towards this clean economy of the future remains a tremendous feat of strength because it's not just about financing. However, it's all about also making it clear to everyone that investments in climate protection pay off for all of us, because anyone who dismisses climate protection as tedious, as bothersome, and superfluous is wrong, because the costs of inaction when it comes to climate protection would be even higher, because global energy transition bears enormous potential. The recent studies of UNDP clearly show that. All of us know that there are spoilers in this world who want to prevent this. Investing into climate protection pay off, but also serve to achieve global equality. The international community and cohesion will be strengthened. And since there are increasingly spoilers in this world, it is ever more important. We must not window dress the global situation, but we also have to make it clear that we have reached a point. There are tipping points which are negatives. Icebergs are melting, but we're also seeing economic tipping points. So we need to invest and we need to use this joint economic clout. There's so much investments and opportunities to be found in renewables. So a lot of things are not reversible anymore, even if some want that. Those who have invested millions in climate action, they don't want to see any stranded investments. This is why climate protection and economic growth are not contradictions. The global market for clean key technologies is going to reach the 2 trillion threshold. 10% of Chinese GDP was made up of clean technologies, and globally, we've seen double investments in renewables than compared to investments in fossil fuels. These examples show, and there's many more examples that show, climate action and protection offers opportunities, and we as Europeans want to tap into that potential. When others like the US decide that they want to stay outside, then it is their decision. But we make it clear that we see opportunities for companies here in Europe, but also cooperation with companies and countries in Latin America and Africa and other regions of the world, and that we want to benefit from this cooperation. Yes, our economic perspective remains clear. We want to make Europe become climate neutral. When it comes to climate protection, it's not only about economic potential and economic interest. No, climate action also is tough security policy. Increasing emissions not only threaten our growth and our potential for development, but they also threaten our security and threaten lives. The climate crisis inflames and fuels conflicts about scarce land resources, drinking water, and other resources. On the other hand, the opposite is true as well. Every centigrade of global warming that is less makes our world more secure. This is why all of these aspects, climate action, economic policies, environmental protection, is so intertwined. And this is why the international community actually is in favor of promoting all these aspects. The Paris agreements remains our guiding star for all parties, although creating unanimity is a challenge. COP is and remains the pivotal forum for the challenge of the century for humanity. We thus advocate and campaign that all countries submit their ambitious NDCs ahead of COP. It is our common goal to reach the green transition efficiently and cost-effective. And we, as European Union, need to publish our NDC. We know that we're yet to publish it, and we hope that we will do that soon. And of course, we will do that ahead of the next COP. And I'm very grateful to the EU Climate Commissioner and the Commissioner for Clean Growth. Very grateful, dear Wopke, that you work on achieving this tirelessly. Here at the Petersberg Climate Dialogue, this is also what characterizes us. We build a bridge from Baku to Berlin, and we show that together with the different actors, we work tirelessly to achieve our goals. We welcome people from delegations from 40 countries here in Berlin to support the incoming COP presidency, to make headway, to make progress, and to achieve the goals that were agreed on in Dubai. And that means transitioning away from fossil fuels and make headway to reduce emissions, to triple the use of renewable energies, and also a stop to deforestation, which in the beautiful and forest-rich Brazil plays such an important role and is such an important issue indeed. Of course, at COP, we want to make progress in the new financing mechanisms. And I'm grateful to you, dear André, the designated president of COP30 in Berlin. We're grateful. Sometimes it's a coincidence, but in my point of view, there could not have been a better place than Berlin in these challenging times, especially in these globally challenging and in important times when it comes to global politics. You want to make it clear that together we not only want to accelerate climate action, but also promote and strengthen rules-based order. We need to mobilize more private funds while at the same time we're able to reduce emissions. We know that the presidency in Brazil is in the best of hands in the Brazilian delegation, especially in your hands with all your expertise and know-how from Germany, and also on behalf of Europeans. We want to actively support you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much. And now the designated president, COP30 Ambassador André Corrêa, has the floor.
So much, not only for the wonderful way that you put this subject and how the present circumstances prove that climate change has become a central issue and will continue to be a central issue, even if there are other issues that are obviously in the shorter term more important for some countries, which is normal. But I want, first of all, to say how the Petersberg dialogue is important. This is the opportunity in which we can discuss some of the most delicate subjects that we're going to deal with at the COP30. How do we understand what happened in COP29? So this dialogue is really something that shows that all these themes are extremely complex and that we have to try to build those bridges, like you kindly said, that we are trying to do in Brazil. So thank you for organizing the Petersberg Dialogue, and thank you for discussing with us this program and this agenda so that it could cover challenges that are very clear for developed countries and challenges also for developing countries, and show that there are solutions, different solutions, because we all know that each country will have to find its own way in this process that we are calling transition, but there are many transitions, but there are solutions, there are answers, and technology, in fact, can help enormously. I would like also to mention that this process, these negotiations are very much seen as an exercise that doesn't come with results. And I think it's rather unfair, because although these discussions somehow are kept as if it was only a small group of people that can deal with these issues, and that it is disconnected to reality or disconnected to the civil society. I think that one of the intentions that we have at COP30, and this is something that for President Lula is extremely important, is to bring a stronger presence of the civil society, a stronger pressure from civil society, and because we know that these subjects have to continue to be at the top of the concerns of politics in absolutely every country. And we intend to bring to Belém lots of information on how many solutions are being applied in developing countries, in developed countries, that can be extremely interesting for sectors that look sometimes at these negotiations as threats to their interests. And as we all know, when you're dealing with things that can affect so much the economy, normally it's the sectors that are going to lose more, that are more active. The sectors that are going to win, many of them, we don't know who they are, and we still depend on so many things. So we have to stick to that. And the other issue that sometimes is seen in these negotiations is that there is a huge divide between North and South. The fact is that there is a defined separation between North and South in the Convention of Climate Change that is extremely present in those negotiations. But we have to remember that everything that we have built up to now was through consensus, which is quite incredible when we think that we have achieved many, many things in Paris, and we have a feeling that Paris is ready to be implemented. And how do we translate this implementation into something that the public understands, that the economy understands? And that's why we want to increase as much as possible the participation of subnational governments, because they, at the end of the day, are the ones that are applying many of the orientations and solutions that are given in these negotiations, and the private sector, because we have to be realistic. The creation of new jobs, the adoption of new technologies, all this depends so much on the private sector. So I think that when we call for a mutirão, that word that we introduced in my first letter to the international community, is the idea that everybody has to come together doing what they can do to help. And this is a concept that comes from the indigenous from Brazil, the Tupi-Guarani. And this word mutirão has no direct translation. So, and I know it's very difficult to pronounce, but that's it. Now people are already using it. I'm very glad. But the idea is that when there is something that affects the community, everybody comes together with their own skills, with what they can do. Not that they all have to do the same thing. They have to do each one what they do well. And I think that this is the spirit that we want to bring to COP30.
Vielen Dank. Nun geht das Wort.
Thank you very much. And now the EU Commissioner has the floor.
Es freut mich sehr.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted and happy to be here. And in particular, I'd like to express my gratitude to Mrs. Baerbock. Dear Annalena, thank you very much for the partnership, the cooperation, and the friendship. And also, thank you for your leadership in the field of climate action, but also very clearly also in the field of geopolitics.
I was already in German thanking Minister Baerbock very much for the truly leading role she has played at the European stage, clearly also at the German stage and at the international stage. And I also wanted to add to that I'm absolutely delighted that Brazil is going to lead the next COP. Tremendously important, and I think also here at the Petersberg dialogue we have experienced Brazilian leadership, Brazilian proactiveness, and true ambition to move the world forward, and that is tremendously important. And dear André, delighted to have you in this position with all your experience and your leadership. That is truly going to move the needle. And ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, that is so important because we all see in how tremendously difficult the geopolitical times we're living in. Multilateralism is under attack, the rule of law is under attack, and we're facing problems literally from every direction, and clearly also in the domain of climate action. But there's no alternative. Things, unfortunately, will get worse before they get better. So humanity doesn't have an alternative and cannot wait. And that is also why it is so important that we have gathered here today and yesterday at the Petersberg conference. And it's truly great. The German government keeps organizing this as always, a precursor, as a first step in the road to the COP, in this case towards COP30. Also because this is not just a meeting of leaders, it is also a meeting of experts, of stakeholders, literally from all corners across the globe. And it is with that a crucial milestone on our road to Belém. What we've done is we've focused on how we can accelerate climate action, how we can strengthen international cooperation and ensure that the promises made at previous COPs are transformed into real measurable outcomes. 10 years ago, you would almost forget, but it was only 10 years ago that we were witnessing the signing of the Paris Agreement. And that was the big moment which fundamentally shifted our approach to tackle climate change. And despite everything that has happened, Paris, in my view, continues to be more important than ever. It is the foundation on which all our actions are being built. And today we have a clear goal as well, to keep the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees within reach. And as you know, at COP28, we made a landmark decision to begin transitioning away from fossil fuels. And that truly was a game-changing moment in our fight against climate change. And then at COP29, we ushered a new era for climate finance with the historic decision, not easy, but still historic decision, to triple the 100 billion climate finance goal. So that, of course, puts the question on the table, what does COP30 represent? What is the goal we're working towards? COP30 is our chance and our opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to fully implement the Paris Agreement and building on the successes of COP28 and COP29. And COP30, of course, will very clearly be the moment where we showcase our ambitious nationally determined contributions, our NDCs, which was, of course, also the buzzword throughout this conference. And we've already succeeded in reducing more than a degree of global warming since Paris, but clearly we're late in the game, and even though we have made progress, this is not enough. And that is why it is so important we keep on this trajectory. I'm convinced that if we manage to succeed, and if we see more rather than less multilateralism, at COP30 we will send a very strong signal to the real economy that the transition to a net zero world is not just possible, but actually it is fully underway. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Wir haben Zeit für 2 bis 3 Fragen.
Thank you very much. We have time for 2 to 3 questions. The first question will be to Folio de Sao Paulo, José de Marante. Please use one of the microphones.
In your letter about the Mutirão, it's 11 pages, but there is just a brief mention about fossil fuels. And one of the big issues right now in Brazil is the exploration of an oil field near the mouth of the Amazonas River, the Foz do Amazonas. And that's happening at the same time of the first climate conference in Amazon rainforest. So how to manage this debate internationally speaking, and in such a moment of uncertainty in climate politics? That's what I see here. And of course, Brazil has the right to develop. It's a country in development. Have the right to explore and to use to extend the use of fossil fuels. This is much important than for other countries. But how to manage this, and that should not sound like a drill, baby drill, you know, this moment. Thank you very much.
So, I think that COP30 is an opportunity to remind all of how much Brazil wants to be transparent and objective in this debate. To start with the choice of Belém, we're choosing a city that is not the city that has the best infrastructure, that is not the city that has all the hotels that most people expect, and is one of the cities that has more social challenges in Brazil. Why? Because President Lula doesn't want to hide the fact that we are still a developing country with many issues that we still have to debate. The issue of oil in the Amazon is one of those subjects that we have to have a very strong debate inside Brazil, because as you said, from a question of sovereignty, this is something that we may discover, that we may use, and the decision about this has to be a decision of the Brazilian society. So I think that at the moment in Brazil, you are having, a bit like everywhere, a discussion among those who are completely against and those who are completely favorable. I think that there is something in the middle that has to be based on some rational and very strong information about what does it mean, what are the consequences, what are the options, and what are the alternatives. And so I think that this is the debate that we are stimulating in Brazil at the moment, and that I hope will bring to some kind, not of consensus, because consensus can only exist in the Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC, but to have a national position about this that has been legitimately debated in the society. And I think that this is the opportunity for us to discuss that.
Vielen Dank. Die nächste Frage geht an Elisa Mieber.
Next question to Elisa Miebach from the German television channel ZDF.
ZDF. I have two questions, if I'm allowed. One to Mr. Corrêa do Lago. When do you think COP30 will be a success regarding the 1.3 trillion, the roadmap Baku to Berlin, and also regarding the NDCs from the countries? Und eine Frage an Ministerin Baerbock über die Klimapolitik hinaus. Können Sie uns noch einmal...
Beyond climate politics, could you give us an assessment on the talks that are held on Ukraine?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's very difficult to define now in advance how can Berlin be considered a success. Obviously, I would say that the very first thing is the strengthening of multilateralism, as was mentioned by all, I think, in our initial words. But we have to remember that these two things that you mentioned that are extremely important for Berlin are not going to be negotiations. The NDCs come from each country because of their own decision, and they're going to present it, and we're going to analyze how they fit into the 1.5 adjustment, alignment, etc. And also the 1.3 trillion is going to be a report that the decision in Baku was that the presidencies of Azerbaijan and Brazil will present a report on how we can reach 1.3 by 2035. So this is somehow, they are two central elements of Berlin, but at the same time they are not negotiations. So we will have to develop in the months ahead what do we all think Berlin should be to be considered a success. And by the way, we depend very much on you to stimulate us with some ideas also.
Dann zur Russland, Ukraine.
On the question pertaining to Russia and Ukraine, it is always important to have discussions. We have learned this, and we handled this in the past 3 years as international community, and this is why it is good that the U.S. is trying to play a role as an intermediator. But let's not fool ourselves, and let's not be deceived by the Russian president. If a ceasefire is tied to concessions and new demands, it is not something we want. In Canada, in G7, we made this clear, inclusively with the U.S., and the massive attacks on Ukraine underline that Putin continues to try to create facts on the battleground, especially when looking at the Black Sea and Ukrainian wheat exports. Putin never actually took the poorest in the world into account. He always played with the worries and the concerns of the poor people. So we've seen false narratives, lies, and war propaganda. The sanctions on wheat don't exact as claimed by Russia. Russia continues to be one of the biggest global exporters of fertilizer and wheat, which proves that trade is still possible. All technical problems and under the leadership of Antonio Guterres has tried to show options to find solutions, but these solutions were denied by Russia, and fake news in the past will not turn into true statements overnight. And we call on Russia to agree to a full ceasefire without further additions and concessions and stop its brutal aggressions on the people in Ukraine. Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. Mr. Putter, Table Media.
One to Mr. do Lago. Ms. Baerbock, Brazil has proposed some reforms of the UN system on climate change. For example, a climate change council by the General Assembly. I was wondering if you could give us some idea of if you support that, what your ideas are on reforms. And Mr. do Lago, Brazil has been outspoken, very much outspoken on the idea of new institutions, new climate, new for financing, for example, on a billionaire's tax and levies. I was wondering, what are we going to see in this from Brazil in this year coming up to the road to Belém to the 1.3 trillion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, President Lula has proposed in the G20 summit for the international community to start thinking about a possible climate change council. Why that? Because we want to strengthen Paris. And to strengthen Paris, we need better implementation. And we think that to implement what is being decided in our negotiations in the Paris Accord, we need to involve all the international organizations, all the structures that we have built in many dimensions of multilateralism. That's why we believe that this council could contribute to that. But this is going to be a debate. This is going to be something that should only be thought of if it can really contribute and not as a new step into a bureaucratic structure. That's why the same way that we have to explain in a better way what the Paris Accord is about, what it has achieved, what it means to the economy and to people, we have to see in which way this council could help and be convincing about how this council could help. But the fact is that the UNFCCC and the Paris Accord don't have the clout, even in the UN system, to expand the implementation of everything that is decided. Because let us remember, the climate change now affects basically every dimension of the economy, is affecting politics, is affecting technology, and can be affected by politics, by technology, and by the economy. So we have to mainstream the discussion of climate as much as possible. And that goes to answer your second question on financing. I think that we had an ideal in 1992 when we created the Climate Change Convention, that we could do something like we had done with the ozone layer, which was to have a convention and then have a protocol that specifies how we are going to get the money, how we're going to get the technology, and how we are going to eliminate what is provoking the problem. So in the case of ozone layer, it is, I remember Kofi Annan saying it was the most successful negotiation in the history of the United Nations. We eliminated 95% of the gases that destroyed the ozone layer thanks to diplomatic negotiations. That's why diplomats keep believing in those things. So when we did the climate change, we thought we were going to do something in the same line. So we had the convention, then we had the Kyoto Protocol, and then problems emerged and increased. As we saw how much climate change was affecting so many sectors, that it was not about a fund, it was not about a simple transfer of one technology that was going to solve all of that. It was infinitely more complex and infinitely more costly and affecting many sectors of many very important countries. So we have to think now that we have a new element that is surrounding us and pressuring us, which is urgency. Science tells us we have very few years to do what is needed for us to avoid 1.5 and the consequences of going beyond 1.5. So in that sense, we have to explore all possible ways of financing what we have to do. So funds are extremely necessary, but think of how much if you take all the funds that we have created together, how much does it mean in billions of dollars when we're talking about trillions now? So we have to definitely think out of the box, but many people have been thinking out of the box. There are very good ideas that have been floating around on how to expand the financial resources for climate-oriented development. And so I think that we have to try to explore them as much as possible. So the Brazilian presidency is starting these efforts with many economies, with many entities that are developing some ideas, and we're going to try to have a very strong report to present with Azerbaijan in Belém that will show the way forward.
We are really thankful for the great leadership of Brazil in these challenging times, because if we are in unnormal times, you cannot use the normal answers to find solutions for these times, and definitely not for the future. So the approach of thinking outside of the box, I would say, is more important than ever. Obviously, this is also more challenging, and this is why also in our meeting we had this morning together, André and I, the designated COP presidency, and myself, we were discussing the different elements, what it could be. Because obviously, and I think I can speak in the name of both of us, we both agree that we cannot form something new which would weaken UNFCCC, because this would be obviously counterproductive and only place in the hands of those who are anyhow trying to weakening the UNFCCC system, and especially the Paris Agreement. So having something in addition which is strengthening Paris, the COPs and UNFCCC, but also making it in these times more practical to find solutions, because time is running obviously out, we believe is true leadership, and therefore we are really thankful to Brazil. My second thought on this is, if we all agree, unfortunately, that the climate crisis is the biggest security threat for the whole world of this century, only talking in a climate regime is obviously too little. The United Nations has been formed for securing global peace, and the climate crisis is a threat to global security. But on the positive side, it is also a tool of strengthening working and cooperation together in the world, having economic growth. And therefore, of the idea of mainstreaming the climate issues through the different fields, not only through environment, climate, sustainability, but also economy, finance, and security, is, I would say, a process also of the last years, where around 160 countries have worked together and said, if this is the geopolitical topic of our times, we should work in different fields together on this one. And therefore, we are very happy to open these discussions of new ideas in this form.
Mr. Commissioner, do you want to add something?
No, I think that is spot on, and that goes to the heart of the of our opening statements. Tremendously complicated geopolitical circumstances that will clearly not be better in the near future. Also, dramatically difficult circumstances in the domain of ever more climate action. And, you know, I would be very hesitant to throw away any part of our current infrastructure, even though it is imperfect, given the risks that would actually bring to the table. Having said that, and that is precisely what my two colleagues were saying, and what our thinking is, can you, on top of that, you know, develop unorthodox paths? Could you develop new partnerships? Could you open new doors to ever more climate action? And by the way, that is precisely what the European Union has been doing, and that many of our member states have been doing. By the way, that is, we're doing that in the domain of climate action, but you see it more broadly as well. What is the reason why, with the whole college, we not just went to Ukraine in the first 100 days, but also to India? Well, clearly, because there is a need to discuss all the important geopolitical issues, climate issues, and financial economic issues with our Indian friends. But in the domain of climate, one of the things that, in my view, was at the heart of the success of COP28, and why I've always called it a victory for diplomacy, is that with a lot of effort, we've managed to bring about a supermajority, a coalition of the ambitious. And that was, at the heart of that, was the cooperation between the European Union and some of our closest allies like Canada and Japan and South Korea, with our friends in the Global South. Brazil, by the way, has played a pivotal role there as well, as have many others in Latin America. But we also managed to bring to the table our friends from the LDCs and the small island development states. And that combination, in my view, and that goes beyond classic groups of countries, will prove to be winning in the domain of climate action. Thank you.
Okay, vielen Dank. Damit kommt diese Pressekonferenz zum Ende.
Thank you very much. This concludes our press conference. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time.